Hey guys, welcome to the Titanium Vault. I'm your host, RJ Bates III, and I am absolutely honored today to have the man, Jerry Norton. How you doing, man?
Good, awesome. Kind of like you, catching my breath.
Yeah, right. So we're recording this the Wednesday after the Closers Olympics, the 2023 Closers Olympics. Brought home the crown the second time, back-to-back championships, but Jerry was one of the judges both during the finals of acquisitions and then Dispo Day, our first ever Dispo Day. So I want Jerry to hop on here and give his feedback. If you don't know who Jerry is, go follow him on YouTube. He's got like 500,000 subscribers or something crazy. He's got like 1 million videos, everything you would ever want to learn about wholesaling. He's the guy the rest of us are chasing when it comes to wholesaling content. So go check that out. And also, thank you for having me on your podcast, man. That was awesome. I've gotten a wave of new followers because of that. So, Jerry, just real quick, what were your thoughts? I mean, I know this is your first ever Closers Olympics to be a part of. What did you think of the event, and give some feedback on that?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know what to expect. I was a little overwhelmed coming in, and I missed the rehearsal, so I kind of was like, I remember calling Elijah, and I'm like, dude, give me the rundown. Like, I'm not quite sure like how this is supposed to work.
Right.
But and it was a lot to judge because part of me was like, dude, I got to comp these properties. How can I even know what we're looking at here? But then I had to pay attention to what they were saying and be really intentional because they all were amazing closers. So now I'm looking for like tiny little nuances to even have something to talk about.
Right.
On one hand, I felt kind of like, man, is it even fair to critique these guys? Because for one, I'd like to see anybody on the spot getting judged. It's easy to armchair quarterback, like Monday morning quarterback somebody. Anybody can do that. But at the same time, like these are cool people. They probably want feedback. And the whole point, I think, is to make this educational so that people watching can see like real time what this looks like to do this business.
Absolutely.
So I
So
thought
I want to unpack what you witnessed first on the finals of the actual Closers Olympics. 3 finalists, Munif Saza, Naaman Taylor, and myself. Kind of unpack. Let's start with Munif. Very unique style, soft-spoken. Unpack what you took from Munif, both good and maybe something you think Munif could work on if you could find anything, because I think he's a brilliant closer.
I mean, my only critique, I said this a little bit during the Closer Olympics, and I don't even know if it's fair because it works for him, right? But the one thing that I felt was he's got a certain style, which is he's so likable, he's so lovable. You know, everybody feels good, even if it's not a deal. He took extra time to like make sure that they, did the right thing, even though there's a clock going, right? And so I think that kind of really, really like personable personality is what does really well for him.
Yep.
But one thing that I try to do in my sales approach is I got to talk to the person on the phone and I got to adapt to them. And I got to adjust a little bit on how I'm going to handle things and do things. And I felt like he was very consistent with the same approach with no matter what the situation was or what the seller was. So that would be kind of like one of the only things that really stuck out to me about Munif.
What about on the positive side of things? What are some strengths that you think he has that people could take away and add to their arsenal?
Oh man, like I have a whole list of notes. I should pull them up, but he's a master at asking the right questions that lead to that transition into where he wants this to go.
Yep.
And a lot of it's kind of subtle things, but it was really good about, just he still maintained control all the time. He was always in control of the call. At least the calls I saw, nothing ever ran away on him.
Right.
Where that did happen, right? We saw that happen with Naaman on the grandma. Yeah, like, oh my gosh, she took control, ran away with it. And he seemed to maintain that control and then say the right things to move them along to the close, which was really good of him.
I agree. And, the thing about it is, Munif now has finished in second place in back-to-back Closers Olympics. He finished second in 2021, finished second this year. And I think there is a certain level of like understanding that there's luck involved with the Closers Olympics, but there's also skill involved. I mean, I finished first, second, Munif, third in 2021 was Max Jimenez. Max Jimenez finished fourth this year. And then Naaman comes in this year, bumps Max down to fourth, and he finishes in third. Let's talk about Naaman a little bit. I feel like
before you do, RJ, the one thing you did masterful is you managed the clock really well. Yeah, I think that was probably had you not managed the clock so well, it would have been a lot tougher because you weren't getting any breaks. Like the phone, no one was answering the phone. You went through a spell where like no one's answering the phone. And yet you didn't just let happen what happened. You managed the clock, which was, that's a competitor right there. I think the other two poorly managed their clock.
I agree. And it's funny you bring that up because right before doing the Closers Olympics, I did 50 days live on YouTube. And I said this on day 50. I said, there are moments during these past 50 days where I have had mental games with myself. For 8 hours, I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, I'm in the finals. I got a 1 hour block. I got to go get a deal. No one knew that. No one knew that I was playing that game with myself. One of the games that I played with myself, and it was the example that I gave myself, was I get on the phone with a seller and I waste 20, 25 minutes, and then it comes to find out we're not getting a signed agreement. Uh-oh. Now what? I just chewed up a vast majority of my clock. We saw that happen with the short sell and the sub 2 situation. And it was funny. So if you weren't there at the Closers Olympics, basically it was a St. Louis property. ARV that they gave me was $40,000. He owed $42,000, but the property needed work. So could have done sub 2, but need $20,000 in work. You're way upside down.
And the cash flow wasn't there.
Right. The only play was short sell.
I was really proud of you you could have sub 2'd that thing all day long. And it probably would have got away with it. We probably would have counted it as a contract.
Right.
But come on, let's be real. That was not a deal either at sub 2.
But now it's Wednesday after, and I'm stuck with a sub 2 that sucks in St. Louis in real life.
Yeah, in real life. Yeah, in real life, you would be backing out of a contract or trying to.
Right, exactly. So I said, hey, we got to do a short sell on this. He was open. And then it led to eventually me getting a contract in Laredo, Texas. Now, with Naaman, very unique style, in my opinion. And I think you can see Naaman goes to everyone's events. Like, he is an education junkie. And I think you see a blend of a lot of different people's closing styles when it comes to Naaman. What were some takeaways there for the people that are listening and say, hey, maybe here's something that I could plug into my arsenal real quick on when I'm talking sellers from Naaman's perspective?
Well, I mean, really talented guy for sure. I didn't like that first deal at all with the basement foundations and stuff. And man, I know we came up with there was the MAO of $20 grand, but I mean, that tired landlord or whatever that was said, yeah, we got a bid for $22,000 in foundation repairs.
The deal kept getting worse.
Oh my gosh. There's no way that was a deal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But the one mistake that I thought he made on that one, we can talk about the other one. The one mistake I made on that one is he does the typical, let me talk to my manager, and then pause. And normally that strategy, it's like a long pause they do. Right. Like the guy's sweating on the other line, and you don't do this style. I'm not a super big fan of that. I know it works, so that's why people do it. He had to do it super fast, so it wasn't even effective anymore. If it's 30 seconds, what's the point? It's almost like a giveaway that you didn't actually talk to anybody, because how did you just have a conversation in 1 minute or 30 seconds?
Right.
You know what I mean? So I felt like that was why even do that if you're not going to do it? But then when he came back.
Real quick on that note, you didn't see it on Saturday. Someone else did that. So there's 12 of us on Saturday, right?
Yeah, I missed that. Yeah.
Yeah. So someone did it where he was like, okay, let me put you on hold. Let me go talk to my finance department. He comes back and he says, I fought for you and I got you 160 grand. And she goes, how? There's no way. You were gone. How did you fight for me? How could you even give the information that I gave you in that time frame? You have to be cognizant of that if you're going to do that style. Honestly, that's why I don't like it, because I don't want to feel like I'm lying at the end of the day.
Well, that's the other thing. And I know Eric Klein does really well with that strategy. And all the power to you guys if you do that. My personal belief is when you do that, you're automatically introducing doubt, because everybody on the other end, whether it's conscious or I think it's conscious, they know that that's a sales tactic.
Right.
How do you not know that's a sales tactic?
Yeah.
So I think it automatically puts you in a place of mistrust.
And do you not think it's a disadvantage when it comes to the negotiations where you always have to say, let me go talk to someone else? Don't you eventually want to take control and say, hey, I'm at 160, you're at 170. Can we do 163? Can we do 165? If you know you can make that work, like my personality is I want to be the one that's in charge of what I'm saying. I don't want to always have to.
Yeah.
I feel like I would mess it up, to be honest with you. I think I would say, well, 165. And they're like, well, what happened to your finance manager? You know?
Right. Yeah. You'd have to go, and they go on pause, like back and forth a bunch of times. And not only is it mistrust from their point of view, but also, you're acting in a way where you're not being truthful and honest. And so, how do you be really good at something if there's a bit of like your own lack of integrity, even if it is a sales tactic? I get that, but that's kind of some of the issues I have with that. But I agree with you. What's funny is you don't see people do that on Dispo. They don't put the cash buyer on hold because he knows better. Like he's gonna be like, dude, let's just cut to the chase and negotiate. Like, what are we doing?
You know where you've got it locked up. You already know where you're willing to assign this at. Let's do this.
Yeah, let's do this. Yeah, I just feel like the approach you take, and I tend to take that approach too, is like, dude, let's just cut down to it. I'll just be honest with you. I'd rather you say like what you do is like, dude, if I'm not buying your deal right now, I'm going to buy somebody else's deal. Do you want my money, or is someone else going to take it? Like that kind of idea.
Yeah. And it's funny because I did that on Saturday. The first seller I talked to, I made an $85,000 offer. They didn't like it. Come to find out, the next person I get on the phone is asking $85,000. And I told that first seller, dude, we have the power to speak things into existence.
Yeah.
When I told them, hey, my $85,000 is going to somebody today. It's either you or it's the next seller. And the next seller says $85,000.
So it was that. But here's the problem I had though with what Naaman did with that. He put her on pause. He put her on hold for a second, and he came back on and he said, the owner wants me to know about the age of the roof. I thought that was the biggest blown opportunity, because what I'm thinking right now, he's going to hammer that basement.
Yep.
He had an opportunity. That lady knows she's got a major basement issue, and he came back on and asked about the freaking roof. What I would have done.
I think that's the clock, though. I think the clock is what impacted, like the competition. That was one of the very few moments that I saw Naaman make a mistake, because I think he was in a competition. I think in real life, he asked about the foundation and not the roof, because there was no point to ask about the roof.
Well, maybe because the sales script is put him on pause, come back on and ask about the roof.
Okay.
So I bet you he does that 100 times a day. So then in his mind, he's just thinking, well, I'm going to come on, and the strategy is I can't really give you an answer because I need to know this one more thing about the roof. But in reality, if he would have said to her, you know what, I just talked to the owner of the company, and they are really, really concerned about this foundation issue. This could cost thousands of dollars. Like, we can get something done here, but man, I'm going to need to be down at like $7,000 or $8,000 because I got to pay. You told me yourself it's $20,000 just for the basement issue.
Right.
He could have leveraged that so well, and she would have been at his mercy right then. Instead of like, she said, oh, the roof was just done. Now he lost all his leverage because the roof was fine.
Right.
He picked the wrong thing,
I agree with you. You brought up the grandma conversation. So in the Closers Olympics, Naaman gets on a phone, and essentially she was a talker. She ran away with the conversation. Probably wasted about 20, 25 minutes of his clock. what do you recommend to people that run into that in real life? How do you navigate that where you're not chewing up a half hour of your 8-hour day?
Well, you have to know that when you're on a grandma who wants a friend. So there was nothing he was going to do to get a deal. She was not going to agree to anything. She was not going to sign anything. You got to get off the phone with that. I would have just been like, wow, I got a grandma who's a talker looking for a friend, not a real seller. You politely cut her off and get off the freaking phone. I would have not tried to close her, find out more, qualify, disqualify. I would have immediately recognized there's no way she's going to make a decision. I wouldn't even make a decision unless I had the decision makers on the phone. I do not do deals with old ladies because they're not going to remember what they signed and they're going to back out later anyway, most of the time. Right. And so I would have been like, hey, can we get your son on the phone? Who's going to make a decision for, because you're going to move in with him or whatever.
Right.
Or something. But I would have probably just got off that call altogether. So
it's interesting though, because like one of the common tips given by, everyone that has a podcast and a YouTube channel is like, hey, you want these conversations. If your conversation lasts an hour, that's probably means you're getting a contract, because it's all about building this rapport and you're really you're identifying the pain, some of what's on our scorecard. But you're saying, hey, talker, I would have gotten off of the phone, which is kind of different than what most people say. How can you differentiate between this is a good hour-long conversation that's going to lead to a contract to someone wants a friend?
Well, I just feel like it became clearer and clearer and clearer with her as that call was going on that there was no way this lady was a legit seller. And so sometimes you don't know, right? Like you don't ever want to jump off the phone too soon. But when you're asking questions, and he was trying at first, and then she runs off with who knows what tangents, then you got to tell yourself, old lady looking for a friend. I can't even rein this in at all. I think he had every opportunity. What we should have been talking about is he wasted 5 minutes with her. And that should be we wasted 25 minutes with her. I mean, he knows there's a clock and we're still on the phone with her, and then he would even try to come back on and ask her a question, knowing it's not going to go anywhere.
Right.
I don't get it. I don't know what he was thinking with that one.
Yeah, I think he was trying to avoid getting negative points from y'all for like getting off too quick, but he should have just run the risk of that being forgotten about.
You saw it in his demeanor. He was like, oh my gosh, you don't think that comes through? He already wrote her off.
Right.
So why not, finish it? You could see he did not believe in this conversation.
Facts. All right. So for everyone that's listening right now, one of the benefits of starting a podcast is that somewhere down the road, maybe 6-7 years later, you'll have Jerry Norton on, and then you can ask for free coaching, which is what I'm going to do right now. So Jerry, you got to watch me for an hour. What would you say I could have done better during my hour?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Me telling RJ Bates how to do his job better. Yeah. Man.
You did give me the highest score out of every judge, which I have to say.
And in all fairness, if anybody were to give me a hard time about that, I also gave you the hardest time in the private chat about qualifying what you did. And I hope, you got kind of ruffled up like, wait a minute, and defending yourself, which you should, because you believed in what you did there. But explain what happened there in case anybody's wondering.
Here's what happened. On Saturday, I got my signed contract. I had 5 minutes left on the clock. About 90 seconds left on the clock, I get a seller on the phone, and he says, I have an 8-unit in Laredo, Texas, in terrible condition that I need to sell. I said, what do you want for it? He said, 125. I said, okay. I look at the clock. I have 25 seconds left. I said, I'm going to call you tomorrow because I got a signed contract. I already know I'm moving on to the finals.
Yeah.
Clock expires. I look right at the camera and say, yeah, baby, I just set an appointment for tomorrow's finals. Y'all are in trouble. So then Elijah comes on and says, hey, we're reshuffling the leads tomorrow. And I'm like, that's not part of the rules. What are we talking about here? Just because hey, this is what great players do, right? They make you change the rules, you know? And
well, they get in the umpire's face. I mean, right? You're a competitor. Yeah.
So come Sunday, seller calls the office line. Team comes in and hands me a piece of paper and says, hey, this seller just called. I'm like, okay. I'm calling everyone else on my leads. Voicemail, voicemail, voicemail. I'm like, this seller called. I called him.
Yeah.
And then Naaman was in the chat saying, y'all told RJ he can't call that seller. And then you were saying, hey, what's going on here? And I'm like, hey, I'm closing a deal.
Yeah.
If this breaks the rules, then I'll be the first person that loses the Closers Olympics by closing a deal. And I got the signed contract. And that's what the ruffle of the feathers was. So
so then there was this chat going back and forth, and there were people saying that doesn't count. And so what I was trying to find out, just so you know, I was trying to find out, okay, so I get it that he had a quick conversation. What I wanted to know was, did you spend time yesterday pre-qualifying and warming this lead and all of that? Because then I would feel like, okay, well, you already laid this one up, and that's not really fair. But that wasn't what happened.
It was about 30 seconds on the phone, and it was awkward because I hung up with him, made sure everyone saw me hang up. I'm like, all right, man, I'm going to call you tomorrow. And he's like, yeah, I mean, you heard him. He was an old man. I mean, he was like, okay. And I'm like, I'll call you tomorrow. I promise. I'm going to buy this house. He's like, okay. And then I just hung up. It was like, all right. So there it was. I thought that was going to have to be something I had to overcome on it. But I mean,
a couple of things I saw that I thought were just fascinating was how you actually got that guy through to a contract when he literally was the most non-tech person I've ever heard of, right? Because he didn't even know anything. He didn't know. You were telling him how to minimize his phone and how to click here. And oh my gosh, I was sweating bullets. Like, how is RJ going to get this guy to sign a contract when he has no idea?
He didn't even know if he had an iPhone or an Android. So I couldn't even like walk it through. I'm like, all right, I hope there's a button at the bottom. And he's like,
one thing I wish would have been differently, and this has nothing to do with you and how you close, but like an 8 unit and trying to value that was tricky. What's the real repair number? You know, I'm totally fascinated to see, is that a deal? Can that even be assigned? You know, and the short sale one was a tough one. Like, you just didn't have a residential house that we could wrap our head around.
Agreed. I will say we do have a lot of interest in the 8 unit already. Okay. And we haven't even blasted it out on Investor Lift. So
because the comp team didn't even give a number, I don't think, did they?
They couldn't. Essentially what they said was there was a 4 unit in rough shape for sale for $349.
Yeah.
And we got it for $125.
Yeah.
So,
but I think the point, though, the whole point is watching you close to a contract, right? Like, seeing that process is what I hope people get a takeaway is like, you get a seller on the phone, you lock that baby up, you close on that thing, and you get a signed contract.
I call it avoiding the 2-step. Like, don't make it a 2-step process, especially with elderly people, because then they have the time to like forget
out of it. Yeah.
Someone else comes over to their house. You know, you never know. I'm trying to do everything virtually. So I'm always trying to avoid the guy that's local that says, hey, I'll come to your house right now and get it signed. Because the older people are going to like that belly to belly interaction. That's not going to happen because that's 12 hours away from me. So that's why, you know, I'm very like, we've got to get this signed right now. Now, we had a special thing this year due to Investor Lift. Robert Winsley came in and said, hey, we're going to do a Dispo Day. You were a part of that. I hosted it with Elijah Rubin, and I thought that was fascinating. Over $125,000 in assignments done in 2 hours and 15 minutes. Give us some takeaways that you got from the Dispo Day, because that was incredible.
Oh, man, I loved Dispo Day. I thought that was so fun because that's when we actually see the money made, right, on Dispo. I've got a real kind of like chip on my shoulder just in general in the wholesale industry, where we put so much weight on acquisitions, and then dispo ends up being like this afterthought a lot of times.
Yep.
And I see that in my content. Like if I put out a video about how to find a deal, everybody wants to learn about that. I put out how to find a buyer, 10% interest, right? No one,
Yep.
and part of it I get, like you got to get your deal before you worry about your buyer. So I get that. But just in general, it's like, oh yeah, we pay somebody, a little salary to do dispo, and we give all this, commission to an acquisitions person. And it's like, dude, the dispo team that salesperson needs to be, in my opinion, even more savvy, because they're dealing with sophisticated cash buyers that are going to be constantly beating them up on price to get a better deal.
They're calling you. They're calling you and trying to sell a deal. They have to know how to talk to you.
Yeah. So it was what the two things I saw was, here's my biggest takeaway from dispo. The better the deal your acquisitions gives you, the more you can, the more fun dispo is, the more you can get, the more you're going to get higher on price. Like the job is so much easier if you actually have a good deal.
Yeah.
And we saw that with
Steve.
Who was the second guy?
Oh, Carlos. He had a rough deal. Dude,
Carlos was trying to wholesale a really tough deal, and you could see it. Like you just saw him fighting and fumbling and no one wanting to. Then he's cold calling somebody.
Right.
Whereas Steve, he had a whole investor lift back office of offers.
He had 10 offers coming in on it before he even called anyone. So he was literally just negotiating the offers.
He was just negotiating over ask price.
Right. They had it on Investor Live at buy it now at 135, I think it was, and it ended up going for like
50 something,
17 over or something like that.
But that's dispo. We just locked up one today in Washington on one of my teams, and it's a 40K assignment, and it was the easiest deal to dispo, and mostly because the deal was so good up front, like the price and the deal, right? So that I hope people took that away. Like, man, you want to dispo really good, and you want people fighting over it, and you're like, okay, well, now you're getting everyone pitting against each other. Get a great deal.
Yep. My biggest takeaway on dispo was the urgency that the dispo managers placed upon the buyers.
Yeah.
This is going right now. I need your numbers. How much EMD could you put down today? That was impressive to me.
Yeah.
I was blown away by that. What were some of the things that you kind of took away from either like a line that they used or something along those lines from these guys? Because it was incredible.
One thing I love from Steve, and I saw him do this. Luckily, we got to see several calls with Steve because, he just locked him up so fast. He was on to the next one. But he would ask a question. He would say, okay, tell me about where you invest. How long have you been investing there? And how many deals do you do a year? And the reason why he was asking that is because then he would say, look, we got multiple offers, and I really want to work with someone who I know we can do a lot of repeat business in the future with.
Yep.
And I thought that was such a brilliant strategy because it's almost like you convinced me why I should give you my deal. That's what it felt like, right? It was like, you tell me why you should get my deal, not me convince you. You convince me. You know what I mean? And I thought I love that. And I agree with you. Like that urgency, it was like, Layla, right? I heard her say on one of them, if I were to send you over the contract right now to sign, is that something you would do for your price of 80 or whatever it was? She used the urgency to get them to commit. I'll commit to that price if you sign right this minute.
And the thing that I like, the number one takeaway from that was not one buyer gave pushback. Not one of them was like, hey, you're not going to pressure me into like doing a deal right now. I'm going to go run my numbers and they were like, completely get it. Let me just give me 2 minutes. Like, just let me figure out what I can do. And then the one guy Layla talked to was like, no. I'm your buyer. And then she tried to hit him on Bryce, and he said, no, I'm the buyer at my number.
Yeah.
I gave you my number.
And notice the two with Steve and hers, None of them even saw the property.
I know.
They locked up. They agreed with non-refundable earnest money, and they didn't even see these properties.
I know. It was crazy.
That's amazing closing skills right there.
It really was. I thought Dispo Day was an incredible addition to Closers Olympics. Here's my thing.
One more thought on that, RJ, about Layla was remember when she was trying to work that buyer up and he would just go no. It was funny because you were like in the chats like that's like me saying no, right? Just it wasn't like let me think about it. It was like no. But she could have just laid it down at the original price and made 20 or whatever it was. Instead, she went one price point down and pushed him at that one. No. And then she's trying to squeak out another like 2,500, and she did. I think she squeaked out another 2,500 or something, or at least tried. I thought that was amazing. Like Dispo needs to get every penny out of that deal.
It really does. And what I said in the chat was I said this guy is doing acquisitions the way I do acquisitions because this is his acquisitions.
Yeah,
he's like no. Yeah. He had a feeling. He was like, I know you're calling me for a reason. You need me.
Yeah.
You're going to sell me the deal right now. And it was fun to see that come back. And there was a little bit of wiggle there. I thought everyone did an incredible job on that. I mean, it just what a spectacle to see 3 properties assigned, $125,000 and in 2 hours and 15 minutes. It was an incredible showcase.
So RJ, I got an idea I want to run by you. Tell me what you think of this.
All right.
I ran it by Rob and he thought it was brilliant too. Wouldn't it be fun? And this is something I'd be willing to do with like you or whatever, but wouldn't it be fun to take, someone on your team or one of your students and say, hey, record the call A to Z, give that to us. And we're going to judge your call, but we're going to actually have the post call, not live. And we're going to pause it. And now talk about it because it's hard to do it while they're still talking because you got to listen and move on. But how powerful would it be if we could do the same type of thing, but as a training and then give it back to your acquisitions and give it back to your dispo and be like, here's our feedback.
I love it. I love it.
My team would love my students or team, my dispo or acquisitions people. They would love something like that.
I think my team wants it. So I could put cameras in front of them and make it happen and make my team the guinea pigs there. And I think the industry needs it.
Yeah.
Like, because what you're saying, we don't talk about dispositions enough. It's just an assumed like, oh, dispo is going to happen. And that's not the case. You do have to work at it. Some deals you get in Washington State and it flies off for 40 grand. But sometimes you have to work the phones.
But I guarantee you, RJ, 99% of wholesale outfits, if they were in Steve's situation, they would have taken that buy now button and been done with it. And he didn't. He worked up another 20 grand out of that deal or whatever.
He essentially sold another property with the amount of money that he boosted it up.
And if there's one thing that people should take away from that is like you get every penny out of that deal. And I think my team would have laid up on that buy now and been like, look what we did. We just sold it. Instead, they left 17 grand on the table is what they did.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I mean, I was actually blown away how he navigated that because he called like multiple buyers to press it up. I mean, it was show.
I would have been pissed if I clicked that buy now button and then he calls me to work me up. I would have been pissed. And I thought that was the one critique Rob had was like, don't put a buy now button if you got a super hot one. Let them bid it up. And I'm like, oh, no one's going to want to do this because they're going to be so mad at him. And he somehow worked them through that where they
never even brought it up. I was blown away. Not one of them was like, dude, you put buy it now at 135 and I hit 135.
Yeah.
Like, it's supposed to be my deal.
Yeah. No one did. No one fought him on it.
Yeah. It must have been like literally the greatest deal ever. I never ran numbers on it because I didn't have the address, but obviously it was a hell of a deal.
It was, yeah.
So here's my question, Jerry. Yeah, this is your first time being involved. Are you coming back? Are you going to come back in 2024?
I mean, here's the thing, RJ. My time's valuable. Your time's valuable. I didn't know half the people because they're just, they're not real big in the space. And a lot of them are just out there running businesses. My biggest thing about the whole thing is why is this not like a 10,000, 20,000 person event with like every eyeball in the industry watching this? Why is it not? Why is it? Because I'll give what people don't know is Elijah and that team, they run a first class event. There was so many moving parts to pull this off. And, we got on press conferences and behind the scenes things. And I was like, wow, what it takes to do this. Not very many people could even pull this off. There's so many people involved in this.
Right.
And I'm like, why is this not bigger? Why is this not like industry wide thing? That's my only complaint about it.
I think the reason why it's not, Jerry, is because the facts are, if Jerry Norton was on the phone competing, that makes it bigger. Jerry Norton judging, I don't know. We've done it year after year. First year it was Brent and Carlos and Max, and then Max and Brent. And I completely understand why some of you guys are like, hey, I'm not gonna do that. But
well, you know why, right? You know why. If I put myself out there as like the expert and then I get on there and get my ass kicked in the first round, now I'm going to look bad. Why would I put myself in that situation? Right.
You can't.
But, yeah. I mean, it's just, but I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of like, maybe, but also a lot of this, there is an element of luck to this. You know what I mean? Like let's say that you didn't have that last 30-second call the day before, and you just kept getting no answer. You might have lost only because you couldn't get somebody on the phone, or you get a really hard one, or you know what I mean? Like whatever. So there is, but that's all competition. Like that's just how it goes.
That's what I'm saying. And I don't know if anybody would look at it. If you competed and you lost in the first round because you didn't get anybody in the phone, I don't think anyone's going to go back and say, oh, Jerry's a fraud, because you've put so much content out there talking to sellers. Like you can go anywhere on your YouTube channel, and it's literally like, hey, Jerry, you don't have a fear of that when you go live for an hour on your YouTube channel.
I go live on the phone all the time, and who knows what's going to happen. Yeah. Right.
So that's my thing is like, I do think that it would be a lot bigger if we had people of your stature and the 2-3 levels below saying, hey, I'm willing to do that, not be a judge, because it's easy to sit in the judge seat.
Oh yeah. Anybody with experience can judge. It's easy to do that.
Right. And I think that's the reason why it hasn't gotten bigger than it has now. I mean, listen, we're still talking about thousands of people showing up, and I completely understand where people are coming from. But I also think, Jerry, that there's a certain level of where people are afraid to get on the phones, even on their own YouTube channel. So that's where we live in a society. It's a social society where, hey, it's easy to sit here and say, this is what you're supposed to do. I think this is why you and I have always connected so well. We've only met in person twice, but we've hit it off because it's like, you and I have no problem just saying, hey, this is what you're supposed to do. Let me show you. Turn on the camera and get on the phones and talk to people, because we actually do this business. And that's what I love about the Closers Olympics. It does show people who do this business. And I hope someday it does get to a bigger audience where there are 20,000 people watching. I'll probably still be winning at that point in time. So, Jerry, I appreciate it.
You pay your dues. You put in the reps. I mean, that's the bottom line. You put in the reps.
Absolutely. Well, Jerry, I appreciate you taking the time, man. You're up in your Montana house right now, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
This guy is you had a camp going on at your Montana house. You judged the Closers Olympics. You're recording like freaking 20-part series on how to do this business while you're up in Montana, and you made time to come and jump on the Titanium Vault, man. I appreciate you so much. Where can people, is YouTube is the best place to
I mean, Jerry, right? my brand is Flipping Mastery, so that's like the handle on Facebook and Instagram and stuff. But yeah, YouTube is, I try to really like follow the comments there a lot, so I'm in really close that way. But yeah, reach out to me on social and appreciate that. And RJ, I said this to you, but the podcast you did where we were sitting down in San Antonio, I get to interview a lot of people, and I'm not just saying this, but that was one of my most fascinating, and I loved the interview that we did. It was really great. I just appreciate you, and let's do more stuff.
I appreciate that, man. What's funny is I went and watched the video after the Closers Olympics, and a lot of what I said in that video was, it was almost picture perfect what happened in the Closers Olympics. That's what I love about this stuff is like when you can watch a podcast and you can hear someone say, hey, this is what you should do, and then you can go consume some other content of them actually doing it.
You know what was funny? I was joking with you about this because it was literally like, somebody snuck into the other football team's locker room and stole their playbook.
Right.
And then I release it on YouTube the day before or 2 days before the Closer Olympics started. That's why I asked you. I honestly asked you, RJ, are you okay that I released this right before Closer Olympics? Because literally your competition should have been studying that video and been like, okay, now I got RJ's playbook. You know what? I'm ready.
Yeah. So, by the way,
exactly how you do the business on that podcast.
Absolutely. By the way, I'm going to drop a link to that YouTube video in the show notes for you guys. Go watch it. Ignore the fact that I turn bright red and splotchy. That's just what I do when I get passionate about things. But it was a great interview, man. Thanks for hopping on here. We'll have to have you back another time so we can talk about the fact that, you're like an international man of mystery. You live in Puerto Rico, Montana. You got 10 kids, and you do real estate all across the country. So I want to talk to you about that, less about the Closers Olympics another time. But thank you for coming on here, Jerry.
Anytime you want, RJ, let me know. I'd love to.
Thanks, man.
Talk to you soon.